Earlier we visited Ein Prat, and the place close by where the prophet Jeremiah was born, a place that was very familiar to him, and a place that featured in Jeremiah chapter 13. So now actually we followed the stream bed further along its path towards Jericho, and we've come to a place where there is a monastery called St. George's Monastery, set here in the Judean desert. So actually, although it's called St. George's, it also commemorates the prophet Elijah, because just a little southeast from here, it is believed that that is the location where the prophet Elijah ascended into heaven in a fiery chariot. But I just want to spend a few moments here today to speak about Christian monasticism, because really Christian monasticism was actually born out of biblical monasticism. For example, the prophet Jeremiah, the prophet Elijah, King David, who all fled to the desert to escape either leaders that were trying to kill them, in the case of King David, who was being pursued by Saul, or prophets who have prophesied destruction, like the prophet Jeremiah, who needed to flee to a safe place and who also maybe needed a place to collect their thoughts, to spend time with God. The desert really is a wonderful place to hear from God, and in fact in Hebrew it's almost like a play on words, because desert in Hebrew is midbar, and to speak in Hebrew is medaber. So the desert is the perfect place to come and hear God speaking to you, because quite frankly you're not going to hear much else out here, right? There's no distractions to take away from that. So Christians who had noticed that the church was not quite what she should be and was not really living in tune with the commandments of Jesus, the commandments of Yeshua, they actually also began to seek a place to come away from the structures of authority and to be able to come back to a place where they were able to live and to commune with God, to hear from God, to speak to Him, and to live according to His commandments. Now, originally they would live by themselves in caves, and then they realized that this was not actually a very good way of living. They needed to have contact with others. And so then they started a concept called a laura. And this was where they would live in different caves along paths, and maybe on Shabbat and maybe on Sunday they would gather together to talk about what God had been showing them during the week. And then they decided, well, if we're doing this, maybe we should have a place where we eat together, a dining room, maybe we should have a more formal type of worship and so on. And so they developed something else that was called the koinebium, which meant to be together. And so slowly it went from the hermits who were living by themselves in the desert to those who were living in communities, so that by the time it got to the 1800s, they were building very complex monasteries out here in the desert. In fact, those are the ones that we really have that we can see today, like St. George's, but actually they already began building these in 300, 400, 500 100 years after the time of Yeshua. So it's a very ancient tradition in the Judean desert. Often when we think of monasteries today, we maybe think of something that wasn't so biblical, but actually it comes out of a very biblical tradition. And in the Judean desert today, we have approximately 53 monasteries, and some of them are truly spectacular. You can probably see that this one is truly set in the side of the cliff, and we have many more like this actually. So it's a treat to be able to explore in the Judean desert and to be able to see these out-of-the-way monasteries that you almost can't even imagine how the people would get up to them. So the one where we were before at En Prat was established by someone called Haritun, and then the next one going down this Wadi after St. George's is actually Karantal, which is located in Jericho, and that one is also really built on the side of the cliff. So this tradition was not only in Israel from the 3rd to the 5th century, it was also in Syria and in Egypt.